We have 5 farewells, so ways to say goodbye. So we'll start with the famous goodbye. You've probably also heard of this one, but again, just in case, we're going to say au revoir. Au revoir. Couple of tricks to this. First off, note that that OI that we discussed in the greetings video is there again. So it's not voir, it's voir with a W sound. Voir. Here's another great example of a common letter combination that makes a sound other than what you might think, and that would be the AU. An AU combination in French is always going to say O. It always will. And it's extremely common, just like the OI. So it's very important that you remember this one as well. We have au revoir. Note that I'm not really saying the re. You can if you want to. There's nothing wrong with saying au revoir. But it's a little bit clunkier when we're actually speaking at full speed. Au revoir flows much faster and easier than au revoir. Plus the French R is a little bit hard to take on. You have to practice that one quite a bit, just like the nasals. If you really, really want to say the re, you can, au revoir, but you don't have to. In fact, most French people don't. We just say au revoir. Your second farewell is see you tomorrow. And this is one that you hear frequently, especially in places where you are all the time, such as going to school, going to work. Maybe if you're on a sports team, you have practice. You hear this one a lot. The phrase is à demain. À demain. À demain. That AIN at the end is all one great big nasal sound again. À demain. That it's nasal. We pronounce all 3 letters together. À demain. You should also note that the A really has an accent on it. This is called an accent grave. We'll talk about the 5 accents a little bit later on in class. Know that when you see this word, though, and others like it, capital letters in French don't necessarily have to be written with the accent. So writing it without the accent and with the accent is the exact same phrase. The accent is simply assumed to be there when it's capitalized. See you soon, another extremely common one, especially between good friends. A bientôt. A bientôt. Note that we're not pronouncing the final T, just like in salut. Same thing here. A bientôt. You must have that accent on the O, though. The one that kind of looks like a little arrow or a hat. It's called the circumflex. Unlike the accent grave, it does not change the way we pronounce the letter, but it's still extremely important to have in terms of spelling. A bientôt. Number 4, we have 2 versions of see you later. Kind of technically 3. The first is à tout à l'heure. It's really fun to say once you get the hang of it, okay? But for right now, let's break it down to its parts. We have that à, tout, à l'heure. Note that we have the same A twice, though if we're writing this, we don't have to write the very first accent because it's capitalized. You always must have it on the second A, though, since that one will never be capitalized, since it's not the beginning of the sentence. But what do you hear different when I say each word separately than when I say them all together? We have à, tout, à l'heure. But when I put the sentence together, I say à tout à l'heure. Do you hear that second T that gets pronounced right there at the end of tout? That's due to something called liaison. When you have a word that has a letter at the end of it that's not normally pronounced, like a T, but the word that comes after it begins with a vowel, or in this case is a vowel, then we have what's called liaison. We smash those words together and pretend like it's all one great big word. That means that those letters that we normally wouldn't pronounce, we suddenly pretend that there's letters after them and we have to pronounce them. So we go from a to a l'heure to a tout à l'heure. A tout à l'heure. You'll also notice I'm not pronouncing the H. H's at the beginnings of a word will never, ever, ever be pronounced in French. So we pronounce this just like it's not there. It's kind of a weird sound, but you'll eventually get used to it. That French R will help. The French R is halfway in between a Spanish R and a German R. So a Spanish R, you have it at the front of your mouth, and sometimes you have those rolling R's. And the German R, as most people think of, is way down in your throat. The French R is like halfway in between. It's right where your mouth meets your throat, not quite all the way as far back as the German R, and it has a little bit of a roll to it, kind of like Spanish, but not quite. R. The first couple of times you try it, you end up coughing and laughing at yourself. It's alright. It takes practice. You'll get there. For right now, just get as close as you can. A tout à l'heure. L'heure. Yes, even though the L has an apostrophe after it, we pronounce it like it's all one big word. L'heure. A tout à l'heure. Our other version of see you later is à plus tard. À plus tard. Note that we pronounce neither the S nor the D. À plus tard. There's another version of this exact same phrase which your book does not include, but it's actually a lot more common. You can actually say à plus. We're going to drop the tar off the end entirely, and now we have to say the S. So we go from à plus tard to à plus. The second one is actually far more common, but for some reason it doesn't show up in your book. Both of these versions are far more informal than à tout à l'heure. You can use à tout à l'heure with just about anyone, but à plus tard and à plus should only be used with people with whom you can be informal, especially with à plus.